I first heard about pilgrimage 6 years ago while I was managing a coffee shop on Maui. I happened to overhear two customers talking about a pilgrimage they took in Spain, and I was instantly intrigued. So I went home and started looking up pilgrimages. And one of the first questions I had was, well, who is a pilgrim anyways? What kind of a person wants to embark on such a journey? So bear with me as I geek out for a second. But I love learning the roots of our words, because when I learn where they come from, they're rendered much more meaningful, and it really connects me to the past. And since people have been going on pilgrimage for centuries upon centuries, understanding where this word comes from connects me to all of those kindred spirits who've walked before me. So pilgrim has its roots in Latin, per agrum. It means through the field. Phil Cousineau, in his book, The Art of Pilgrimage, best described a pilgrim when he wrote, "A pilgrim is a curious soul who walks beyond known boundaries, crosses fields, touching the earth with a destination in mind and a purpose in heart." Pilgrimage to me is a long journey by foot to a sacred place. And when I say sacred, I'm not using it in a religious context. Something is sacred to me if it stirs our authentic heart and awakens the soul to something greater. At the time, 6 years ago, walking a pilgrimage didn't seem like a call. It was more of just like something cool that I threw on my bucket list that I knew I'd do someday. What people tend to describe who've walked a pilgrimage is this call to go. And it's something that really comes from the heart. And so I started thinking, why would anyone want to trust a feeling that really can't be rationalized by the head anyways? And following that train of thought, I went thinking, why are we in Western culture so reluctant to trust our hearts anyways? So we're going to travel back in time a little bit to the 17th century. William Harvey was an English doctor, and he used to give lectures on the heart. And he was the first person to show the heart as a pump. He proved that it's a muscle, and contrary to popular belief at the time, he showed that the left and right sides of the heart are not connected. What had been known for people in Western culture, their heart had been this center of their faith. It was a glowing light inside that radiated outwards. It was the source of their courage, their compassion, their passion, their loyalty. And all of a sudden, Harvey comes along. And this shift, his lectures changed the way that Western society viewed the heart. This was the catalyst to Western culture becoming much more of a head culture. Hence this beautiful dilemma that we all face, the battle between head and heart. Which one is going to win? I'm so grateful for my time here at Antioch, because in learning about psychology and spiritual studies, my relationship with my own heart has deepened. And as it's deepened, this call to walk a pilgrimage became stronger and stronger to the point where I could no longer ignore it. As I mentioned earlier, this call is something really common that people talk about a lot. For me, it was a longing for meaning. We live in this hedonistic culture that's in constant pursuit of instant gratification. All of this marketing is just buzzing all around us all the time. We're in debt, we're possessed by our possessions, and somewhere along the way, we've really forgotten how to live. Simone de Beauvoir wrote, "Life is occupied in both perpetuating itself and in surpassing itself. If all it does is maintain itself, then living is only not dying." This quote struck a chord with me because I realized I've been living my life only not dying. I had to ask myself, how much of my life am I living on autopilot? And how much of each experience that I have every day am I fully living and enjoying? For me, this call to walk a pilgrimage was my heart's way of saying I needed to step away from all this chaos that I created and voluntarily step into simplicity in order to reconnect with my true self. So synchronicities. So Carl Jung, who's a famous depth psychologist, refers to synchronicities a lot. He says they're coincidences that are impossible to explain and ignore. What happens, at least what happened for me, is I started listening to this call to walk a pilgrimage. So it's coming from my heart. Then my mind kicks in and starts making up all these excuses for why I shouldn't do this. Then all of a sudden, all these signs start appearing that sort of help me be able to trust in my heart. So here's an example of a guy whose father passed away. After his father died and they sold his house, he found himself at a time where he could go wherever he wanted to in the world. He happened to go to a talk that Rick Steves gave on the Camino. And he thought, that's kind of cool, kind of like how I was, bucket list, check. Then he's on his way to Europe. He stops in Montreal for a layover, walks into a church, and they had a display on the Camino. And at that point, he's a little bit more fascinated. Then he makes it to Paris. He's wandering the streets of Paris, walks into a bookstore, and what does he find but a whole display wall about the Camino? So he buys 2 books on the Camino de Santiago, one of them written by a Berlin comedian, Hoppe Kerkeling. He gets back to the States after having a nice time in Europe, tunes into Rick Steves' radio show. Who does he happen to have on but Hoppe Kerkeling talking about the Camino? So his mind all of a sudden is like, what are you doing? You can't go on pilgrimage. It's too much time away from work. It's too much money. And he listened to that intuition. He said it was way too strong to ignore. And he went and had an incredibly transformational journey. For me, I heard about pilgrimage and I thought, okay, walking in Spain would be cool, but so many people walk those routes in Spain, and I didn't want to be with a bunch of other people. And so I was researching, and I wanted to walk one in Italy because I have roots in that country. My heart speaks Italian. It's always been a really healing place for me. And so I found a route called the Via Francigena, which is a 2,000-kilometer pilgrimage that starts in Canterbury, England. It goes into France, through Switzerland, over the Alps into Italy, and you arrive in Rome. It takes 3 months to do. And so I had started thinking, okay, that's the one for me. But then 4 years ago, I started at Antioch University, and my very first advisor that I had at the time, Cindy Updegrave, we happened to start talking about pilgrimage, and she's the first one that told me about the way of St. Francis. And a little seed was planted. Then it was about a little over 2 years ago, I thought, you know what, I'm gonna do this. And so I was online looking at plane tickets, trying to figure out if I could get all this time off my schedule. And I happened upon a random pilgrim's website where I read that the very first guidebook, Sandy, your guidebook, that was written in English was going to be published the following year. And once I found out that the author was a Seattleite, I thought, oh my God, I'm pumping the brakes because he's going to be my resource if I need help. Then last spring, I took Randy's class, Eco-Spirituality, which was extremely transformational for me. In his class, I learned the importance and how good it felt to really deeply connect with all beings. This made me think of St. Francis, because not only was he a man who lived a very simplistic life, but his ability to connect not just with other people, but with all beings, I found inspirational. So what started as this sort of hunch was then like me going, no, I really need to go. I felt this immense pull to follow in his footsteps, not for religious purposes, but for soulful ones. He was a saint that I believed lived in a constant state of heart coherence. Heart coherence. This is something I just absolutely love. This is when our heart's rhythm becomes smooth and steady. And this smooth and steady beat of our heart impacts our brain processes. Once this happens, our respiratory systems are impacted, and so is our, sorry, I'm totally blinking out, and so is our blood pressure systems. So basically, all these symptoms become synchronized and start working optimally, where we use the least amount of energy possible. When we're in a state of heart coherence, we have increased intuition, and we experience a greater interconnectedness with all beings. Sound like St. Francis? It did to me. So our hearts, they have these electromagnetic fields that extend out all around us. When we're in a state of heart coherence, it's like this picture here that you guys see. This is their electromagnetic field. It extends anywhere from 3 to 4 feet out all around us. To me, this gave the term heart-to-heart new meaning. I like to think that whenever I'm interacting with any sort of being, that my heart's electromagnetic fields are interacting with theirs. So if I'm talking with someone, even if our thoughts are different, like with current election stuff, I know our hearts are still interacting. My goal to walk this pilgrimage was to see if I could stay in a state of heart coherence as much as possible, because I was curious to see what that would feel like, what that would be like for me. So we're moving on. We've heard this call, we've decided, okay, we're gonna do this. The hero's journey. Joseph Campbell talks about this a lot. I think walking a pilgrimage is very similar to the hero's journey. It's broken down, this is the hero's journey broken down into 3 stages. The first is separation, which is the departure. Liminal is where all the experiences take place. And then the return is, well, it's pretty obvious. So we're getting ready to depart, separation. This was a really terrifying time for me. This quote summarizes it perfectly. It's from The Art of Pilgrimage. A vacation is easy to embark upon. Everything has been laid out for us to have a predictable, comfortable, and reassuring holiday. But a pilgrimage is different. We're actually beckoning to the darkness in our lives. The fear is real. So this separation is totally terrifying because we're leaving all of our comforts behind and we're getting ready to embark into the unknown. We don't know if we can physically and emotionally handle the journey. We don't know where we will sleep each night. So after you've been walking in the hot summer sun all day long, that's kind of a scary thought. We don't know who we will encounter along the way. So for a woman going alone, this is also scary. We don't know what the weather will be like. Then we start to get these, concerns like, what if I get lost? What if I get injured along the way and no one's there to help me? What am I gonna do? What if I can't finish this journey? What will people back home think of me? And what will I think of myself? So as you can see, you've got all these anxiety and doubts that are just plaguing your brain. The night before I left, it was one of the hardest, most anxiety-filled moments of my life. My head was literally at war with my heart, and my head was winning. I was in a state of pure panic, and I took it out on my loved ones, including my younger sister who walked the first half with me. My anxiety turned into hate, which then turned up her fear. We got into this huge fight, and I didn't know if she was gonna come. So I woke up the day of departure, not knowing if I was going alone for the first half or if she was coming with me. So all this fear, where does it come from? It's our ego. This is all head stuff going on. Our ego realizes that we're on the cusp of change, and it doesn't like this because it knows it's gonna have to relinquish its power. So it sinks its talons into our psyche and creates this paralyzing fear. So the ego is this part of our conscious mind that leads us to believe that it represents the totality of who we are, when in fact our hearts know that we're a small part in a much bigger picture. The state of fear is one that most pilgrims face, and packing is the catalyst. In deciding what is necessary to take versus what we think we need, we begin to shed our persona. For those of you who aren't familiar with the term persona, it's this mask that we choose to wear to present ourselves to the world. So it's how we want to show up. Clothing in Jungian psychology is symbolic of persona. So the simple attire that we wear on pilgrimage, because you're really only bringing 2 pairs of clothes, it requires us to temporarily set our persona aside, so we're kind of like these walking blank slates. I chose this image of the iceberg because I think it's a good visual representation of how small our headspace actually is. So the tip of the iceberg is head territory. That's where our ego and our persona reside. The rest of the iceberg that's submerged contains all of those parts of us that maybe we haven't fully accepted yet. When we go on pilgrimage, remember we're wearing this really simple attire. So imagine that whole tip of the iceberg being temporarily set aside. Well, what happens is all those parts of us that have been submerged suddenly start to surface as we walk. We don't have the distractions that we have back home. And so while we're on pilgrimage, we're forced to face all of these parts of us that are surfacing. This is one of the really transformational pieces or components of pilgrimage. For me, this was extremely terrifying. Towards the end of my training, I practiced with 14 pounds in my backpack. The night that I was getting ready to leave, I put everything in I thought I need, weighed my pack, and I was at 20 pounds. And that wasn't including the 6 pounds of water I was gonna have to carry most days because we were walking in the hot summer sun and a lot of stages don't have anywhere to refill water. So I was freaking out. And this was total persona stuff. I spent 4 hours looking through my bag. Okay, what do I absolutely need? What can I let go of? And I kept thinking, oh my God, I'm going to Italy. This is the country where everyone is so beautifully made up. And I'm gonna be this frumpy, sweaty, plain Jane girl with no makeup and then to top it off with bad hair. Because curly hair people know this is not easy to maintain. So this was all persona stuff. But what happens is, as you start going, this little tip of the iceberg gets removed and all the stuff that's underneath you get to finally face. This moves us into the liminal stage, which is stage 2. This is where we enter into our darkness and confront our demons. Now there's 3 types of experiences in this stage. The first is a deepened relationship with self. Carl Jung refers to this as the process of individuation. It's this shedding of who we thought we were and discovery of our true, authentic self. It makes it sound so much easier than it really is. So that Berlin author that I had talked about earlier, Hoppe Kerkeling, he wrote in his book, "It's funny. At home you look different on the outside with each day, yet on the inside you stay virtually the same. Here on the Camino, you're always the same on the outside, but on the inside you change by the hour." So this inner transformation is shaped by the experiences that we have along the journey. So we're carrying our physical baggage as we walk, but then on top of that, now we have all this emotional baggage that's coming up too. And this emotional baggage at times weighs way more than the physical. So walking at pilgrimage, I started realizing it's this perfect recipe for release because you're physically exhausted. And this constant rhythm of walking, it's like this sweet lullaby that gently rocks our little ego to sleep. We get to observe our feelings from the outside. It's like getting this bird's eye perspective of what's going on. And so we get a chance to really look at these core beliefs that we've held on to for so many years, and we get to decide, okay, no, I don't really like that I think this way about myself. You're going. And so you experience these really transformational releases. One of the ones that I experienced while walking involves the first really, well, I call it really, it was 21 miles that my sister and I had to walk this one day. And it was our first 21-mile day. It was our only 21-mile day. Oh no, we had one more, yeah. I realized as I was walking that I was holding on to a recent breakup because my boyfriend and I of 3 years, 1 month before I left for pilgrimage, we broke up. And so I noticed as we were walking this day, I was holding on to a lot of anger and disappointment. This day was hard because we were walking in full sun. There was a lot of elevation gain and loss. And we got to mile 14 and we realized, okay, we have 3 options here. We walk 7 more miles up and down another mountain, risk encountering wild boar because they come out at night to feed, and the sun was about an hour and a half from setting. We could walk along the highway, which would shave off a lot of mileage, but it'd also be pretty dangerous, or we could take the bus. I was in physical pain that day because I have plantar fasciitis in both feet, and it was flaring up like crazy that day, and I was exhausted. But somewhere inside myself, I heard this whisper of a voice that kept repeating, "Take on the mountain, take it on." And so I turned and I looked at my sister because we were sitting there trying to figure out what to do. And I finally said, "This is ridiculous. We're wasting time trying to figure everything out. Let's just take on this freaking mountain." And so we started walking. And as we walked, my pace quickened. And as my pace quickened, I was like, this is anger. This is total anger coming up. And I started yelling, "Fine, you didn't want to fight for me. Screw you. That's your loss." And thank you. In that moment, I realized somewhere along the way, I stopped fighting for myself. I realized I had never saw myself as this strong, like, warrior fighter woman. I put myself in relationships that I knew deep down inside they weren't the right person for me, but I placed my value in whether or not they saw me as worthy of fighting for. My pace quickened. I was flying up that mountain. My trekking poles were digging into the ground as I was pushing off. My sister was behind me going, "Oh my God, Erinn, you're so strong. Go girl, go girl." I cried and I yelled and I screamed and I made the most primal of wild woman noises that I did not think I was capable of producing. And I let that core belief go. And when I let it go, I became as light as a feather. And so we took a video. We were about 2 miles up this mountain when all this was happening. And yeah, Ava, cover your ears because there's some swear words that you're going to see or hear. But it was a very raw moment. And I'd like to share that with you. So please, not only my 8-year-old niece, but please don't mind all the profanities that you're about to hear.
San Sepolcro to Città di Castello. Yeah, Città di Castello. We didn't fucking stop at Cittadina. And I'll tell you what, we're in mile 16? 16 and we have 4 more to go and the sun is about an hour and a half from setting. We did not want to take the bus. Because we don't give up. We don't give up. Of all the times that fucking men or other situations make us quit because we don't have the choice, we fucking had the choice on this one. And we didn't give up. We chose to keep going. We booked up that fucking hill. Look how high up we are. I don't know if you can see because the sun is shining. We're up high and we did not quit. So none of you, when you're faced with a situation that you think is tough, don't take the easy way out. You fight. You never stop fighting, okay? Day 10 is almost fucking done, but we're calling it good. We're gonna fucking finish it. Shit, I'm sorry for all the swear words. This is my wild woman. She's not gonna quit. No, she's gonna keep on fighting. Bye.
Yes. Sometimes you don't realize the weight of something you've been carrying until you feel the weight of its release. So let's see. Now we're moving on to the second type of Camino experience, which is a deepened relationship with others. So having set our persona aside, we drop our guard and we take on this childlike curiosity in our hearts. When we're in this place of non-judgment, we have the deepest, it enables us to have the deepest of conversations with strangers from all over the world, conversations that wouldn't happen so easily back home. Our hearts break open as we realize that regardless of our culture, gender, age, race, religion, sexual preference, or ability, we share the same emotions and we harbor the same questions and concerns in our hearts. We form the closest of relationships and you really do become a Camino family. So I'd like to introduce you guys to my Camino family. It consists of my little sister Amy, who's right here as well. 3 Italian guys who none of them knew each other while walking, but we all kind of met along the way. So this is Gabriele, Luca, and Alberto. From the start, we supported each other however we could, be it listening, so as we're processing emotions, we have curiosities about things, so we talked about psychology and spirituality and philosophy, and we sang the cheesiest of Italian songs that I don't get too many opportunities to sing here. We cracked jokes to lighten the mood. We would massage each other during our breaks or at the end of the day. We'd pop each other's blisters, sounds gross, but you just don't mind. And we shared whatever we had, be it food, drink, music, and medical supplies. And as we kept walking together, I realized that their success was my success, that their pain was my pain, and that their joy was my joy. Because you don't have much while you're walking. You don't feel like you have much to give, but you have so much to give. So the other type of experience is this kindness of strangers. Some people refer to them as Camino angels. I experienced a lot of these, but there was a story that a mother and daughter told me while they were walking the Camino Francés, and I just thought it was so special. I want to share their story with you. So they're walking this one pilgrimage route in Spain, and the mom ends up in the hospital for medical reasons. The day that she gets released, it's late in the afternoon, and by the time they got to the town that was their destination for the evening, there were no beds left. So they're sitting in a plaza trying to figure out what to do, when all of a sudden these 2 women, who they didn't know, approached them. They started talking, and their predicament came up, and these 2 women said, "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to come with us back to our pilgrim hostel. We've showered. We feel well rested. We're going to walk to the next town, which was over 11 miles away, and you're going to take our beds." So let me ask you this. When would something like this happen back here? As we walk, we release emotional pain and our core beliefs that no longer serve us. We realize that we're much stronger than we had previously thought. We experience firsthand the kindness of strangers and this beauty of deeply connecting with other people. And just when we think our hearts couldn't get any fuller, we experience a proximity to mystery, which is the 3rd type of Camino experience in the liminal stage. It's where we perceive a oneness or a unity with life. Another one of Randy's really great classes that I appreciated was Spiritual Psychology of the Human Heart. And when I was taking that class, I read this quote. "People no longer tread over the bare earth. Their hands have drawn away from the grasses and flowers. They do not gaze up to the heavens. Their ears are deaf to the songs of birds. Their noses are rendered insensitive by exhaust fumes. And their tongues have forgotten the simple tastes of nature. All 5 senses have grown isolated from nature." Our sensory exchanges with the environment are what break down this barrier between self and world. I realized through my studies at Antioch and in practicing mindfulness that I've gone through most of my adult life without really fully experiencing it. Every day, nature presented me with gifts that I chose to ignore, such as stopping to smell the intoxicatingly sweet scent of a rose in bloom. This proximity to nature, mystery, is when the veil of the visible and invisible worlds is drawn, and we realize, if even just for a brief instant, that we're interconnected beings, that I'm just as much a part of nature as nature is of me. We greet each other without words, and we embrace in the moment. So walking in this heart coherence allowed me to have a lot of these really profound, interconnected moments. There's one I'd like to share with you. this forest is like the most magical place I've ever seen in the world. It sits right outside a sanctuary called Santuario de la Verna. This place has faces in trees, faces in rocks. It feels so alive. There's caves, these huge moss-covered boulders. It's just absolutely magical. And so as my sister and I walked through these woods, we both turned to each other and said, yeah, we're taking a rest day tomorrow because we want to hang out in this forest. And so we went our separate ways the next day in the woods because we each wanted to be open to seeing where we were drawn to. So I went to a lot of spots along the way, but there was this one particular moss-covered boulder that I felt like kept calling me. And so I climbed up on top and I sat down and I was doing a seated meditation. And the longer I sat there, I started to notice this presence on my left side. You know when someone gets into your bubble and you're just kind of like, ah, someone's there. It was like that. As I sat there, I didn't want to break my meditation, so I just sort of noted presence. As I sat there, it started moving in front of me, and it got closer and closer and closer. And the closer it got, the more I felt like it was shrinking in size, and I started to get a little bit anxious. I noticed this heaviness in my chest. And next thing I knew, it just went, boom, and it penetrated my heart. And in that moment, I was filled with the biggest sense of inner peace and joy I've ever felt. That is an example of non-duality. There is no subject and object. We're simply these interconnected beings. In that moment, I didn't know where I ended and where the rest of it began. We were just one. Hazrat Inayat Khan wrote, "Everything is listening, despite its apparent silence." So all good things have to come to an end. So the last part of the liminal stage is the arrival at the destination. So this one here is my sister and I arriving in Assisi, and the one over here is me with the guys arriving in Rome. Once you arrive, it's best to really do a ritual to sort of mark the ending. For pilgrims, part of the ritual is when you get to your destination, you go to the pilgrim's office, you show them your passport, because when you walk, in order to be a pilgrim, you have to carry a passport, and each place you stay, they stamp. This proves you've done the journey. So when you arrive at each place, so one for Rome and one for Assisi, you receive a testimonium that proves, okay, this person rocks, they did this. But one of my biggest regrets from this journey is that both in Assisi and in Rome, that we didn't do some sort of ritual with all of us that went on this journey together to really mark the end. So it's still something that feels unfinished to me. But the other part about arriving is it's the perfect time to start reflecting on all the experiences that you had to figure out what are the lessons, what's my takeaway from all of this. Which brings us to stage 3 of the hero's journey, the return. Joseph Campbell says that the hero has to return. It's his or her duty to share their experiences with their community. But he also says the hero does not want to return because you're off having these great experiences. You're learning new things about yourself. This is great. If I go back home, everything's the same. And what happens to me if I go back home and then I go back to being the old Erinn? That's scary stuff. And so my process of returning, like a lot of pilgrims struggle with this. You get this like post-pilgrimage depression. What's helped me is this reflection process. So I realized that walking, the moments where I experienced pure happiness was when it was moments where I was fully present, when I was engaged with myself, when I was engaged with others, or when I was engaged with the greater picture. I came home, I purged. I did not need the stuff that I thought I needed before. And what I've worked really hard to try and do is foster my friendships, foster the relationships, Embrace the sacred. So taking that time to do those daily meditations, all that stuff that I thought before, oh, I'd like to, but I'm too busy. Now I know it feels so good, I make time for that. And then in further reflecting, I realized that I touched on so many qualities of the heart while walking. I touched on the core of my authentic self. I realized that my heart really is the source of my emotions, such as love, compassion, appreciation, and courage. And when I take care of myself, I have so much of that to give to others. It's my ability to overcome obstacles. Walking with plantar fasciitis, I realized complaining about it only makes it worse. So self-care is good, but there's no reason to complain. The deeper connection with yourself, others, and all sentient beings. It's that hero within, so that little whisper of a voice that told me to take on the mountain is now like, you can do anything! It's that greater discernment and intuitive clarity. So that ability to really look at my life kind of more from a bird's eye view and think, what is it that I really need versus what do I think that I need? What's going to give me that heartfelt sense of gladness and not just this like instant gratification? And then the last one, which is one of the most important ones to me, is that increased trust in the unknown. I'm on the cusp of my graduation. This is the ending of a big chapter, and I have no idea what's in store for me. But there's a saying that pilgrims say to each other, especially to people who haven't yet embarked on the journey, who are freaking out. They say, don't worry, the Camino provides. And I trust that now. I'd like to end tonight in a similar way to how we began, and that's by breathing together. So I'd invite you to get into a comfortable seated position again, with your feet square on the floor, or Ava as close as you can. Sit up nice and tall, and place one or both hands over your heart. Close your eyes if that's comfortable to you, otherwise find that spot on the floor to look at. And this time I'd like you to really connect with your own breath. And I'm going to read to you something, a quote by Linda Hogan, who's a famous Native American writer. Walking, I am listening to a deeper way. Suddenly, all my ancestors are behind me. Be still, they say. Watch and listen. You are the result of the love of thousands. You are the result of the love of thousands. Slowly bring your attention back to the room. There's a saying, a greeting really, that pilgrims exchange when they walk. And locals, recognizing you're a pilgrim, say this to you as well. And that is to wish each other a good journey. So in Italian, because I walked in Italy, that saying is Buon Cammino. And I want to recognize that each and every one of you are on your journey, your own journey. And I wish each of you from the bottom of my heart, Buon Cammino. Grazie. Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions, comments, anything? Yes.
So do you think that the process will be identical since you've done it before in terms of like the freaking out at the beginning? Do you think that'll just happen again naturally because it's part of the process, or knowing to anticipate it, do you think it'll be different?
I think I have that, like that last thing, that increased trust in the unknown, but I think there will definitely still be some freaking out. I mean, I know what worked for walking in the summer, but like I already bought a ticket because Delta was having a sale, so I get to go to Italy in April for like $450. And one of my ideas is to go back to that route and walk another piece of it, like a different section. And so I've never walked in April. So there's that, well, what do I really need? Like, you know, is it going to be cold? So I think there'll be some of that still, because with each route is slightly different. So, yeah.
I'm curious, so it's the route is the route that St. Francis took. So I'm assuming, are there like writings of his from his journey, or how much, like, did you read that a lot, and how much did that influence you?
So I, like, the guidebook that's here that Sandy Brown wrote, one of the things that I really appreciated that he did in this is that at each town, he shares a story about St. Francis, because this pilgrimage route wasn't exactly like St. Francis didn't go and walk these exact steps, but he spent time in all of these towns and left a lasting impression. And so understanding his story in each place, like that, the woods where I showed you, so that sanctuary was where he received his stigmata. And he was the first person to have received it since Christ, I believe. And no one knew that he did until he died and they found the wounds. And so each place that you go to has a story about that. So I felt really connected to it. And then, you know, there'll be like some parts, they'll have little quotes that he said.
So Erinn, can you talk about the locals that live in the areas that you walk through and how they became part of your Camino family and how they encouraged your heart?
Yeah, they were amazing. What I really appreciated that I was able to pick up on, I knew I was in a different region by listening to the dialect. And so my favorite is still the one from Florence, because, say americana instead of say americana. But like one of the examples was my sister and I, it was our third day of walking, and our feet were in really bad shape. We had blisters and everything else, and we hadn't been able to find a pharmacy that was open until we got to this town, Stia. And the pharmacists there were these sisters that were the sweetest people. They looked at our feet and they were like, oh, okay, come with us into this special room. And they were asking us like what kind of shoes we were wearing, how much we were walking. They gave us all this medicine and stuff for our blisters, walked us through how to treat them. And then they were like, you know what? You guys are walking a lot. Why don't you take some of these magnesium and potassium packets? Why don't you take some of this? And so they were just always willing to give us stuff. There were other people who'd be driving by in cars and see us walking, and they'd stop and be like, do you want some fruit? Do you want some of this? And so it was just a lot of stuff like that. Or they'd, give us suggestions like, it's going to be really, really hot tomorrow, so you might want to leave a little bit earlier, or go eat at this one place. So they were just always really, really helpful, really sweet. Yeah. There was this old man we encountered, and he's walking with these wooden sticks that were kind of taller than him, and he's buongiorno as we walk. And so we started talking with him, and he goes, whatever you do, don't close the gate, because the beasts are coming, the cows are coming. And Amy and I, being, two silly Americans, were like, cows, cool. And so you could hear the cowbells in the distance, and as they neared, I was like, let's get our cameras out and get all ready so that when they come, we could take a picture. And so the cows come around the corner, and there were these big white cows with these horns, and I just froze. And then all of a sudden, you hear this deep, deep voice going, via, via, andate via della strada, like, get out of the road, what are you doing? And so I look, there's nowhere to go on the left, and to the right, there's like this deep ravine, and so we're trying to inch down, we got our backpacks and our trekking poles and the cameras out, and I'm like, is this okay, is this okay? He goes, keep going, keep going. And I fell. It was my one and only pilgrim tumble. And he looked at me and he goes, that's good. Yeah. Anybody else?
Can you comment on the older couple that you ran into and
Oh,
share
yeah.
with us
There was
the inspiration that they gave you in the story of their life?
There was a really sweet couple that we encountered this one day, and they just stopped and they wanted to talk for a long time. And they had been married for like 65 years, Amy? And they walked every day to the church that they got married in to celebrate each other. And I thought that was so sweet. So, yeah. Anyone else? We got a couple more minutes. No? Jamie? Oh, yeah, Jamie. I've been worried about this.
Well, I was just just curious, for those of us that maybe don't have time to do a pilgrimage like you did, is there any way in just our everyday lives that we could experience some of the feelings that you did? I guess, is there any ways that you can think of things that we can do, I guess, to experience some of the things that you did?
Yeah, I put together a flyer as well. Are they over here? They're over by the door. And I kind of divided it into this half is pilgrimage stuff, and this half is like walking meditation. Those are right there. Walking a labyrinth and like heart coherence. More information on that and a link to do a quick heart coherence meditation. Because what I've noticed is the more that I've gotten in touch with my heart, the less quick I am to react, and the more I can like be kind to myself, which was huge because I was always really, really hard on myself. And then the kinder I am to myself, the kinder I am to others too. So it's really like treat yourself how you want to be treated. And so yeah, I think trying to stay, like carve moments out of your day, even if it's 5 minutes where you can have the most present and engaged 5 minutes is better than nothing. Yeah, but the heart meditations have really changed my life doing those. Yeah. Are we good? All right. Thank you so much, you guys. Thank you.